like the traditional method of overhead absorption. So, which uses overhead absorption rate in charging overheads to the cost units. Activity-based costing uses the cost drivers. So as I was saying, activity-based costing is a system whereby overheads are chargeable to the product using the cost drivers. But under the traditional techniques, overhead absorption rate is used for the traditional techniques. And overhead absorption rate is computed using by dividing the budgeted overheads by the budgeted level of activities. So, what do we mean by the cost pool? Cost pool is an activity which consumes resources and for which overhead costs are identified and allocated. Cost pool is an activity which consumes resources and for which overhead costs are identified and allocated. There is always a cost driver for each cost pool. There is always a cost drivers for each cost pool. Activity and cost pool may be used interchangeably. You can use activities and cost pools interchangeably. So what do we mean by cost drivers? Cost drivers are factors which cause a change in the cost of activities. Factors that cause a change in the cost of activities are said to be the cost drivers. So we are given the examples of the cost drivers. So we have the cost and the possible cost drivers. Number one, we have ordering cost. The possible cost driver is number of orders. Ordering cost, number of orders. Setup cost, number of production runs. Material handling cost, number of production runs. Inspection cost, number of inspections or inspection hours. Dispatching cost, number of dispatches. Raw materials inventory handling cost, number of purchase order delivered. I repeat, ordering cost, number of orders. Setup cost, number of production runs. Material handling cost, number of production runs. Inspection cost, number of inspections or inspection hours. Dispatches cost, number of dispatches. Raw materials inventory handling cost, have number of purchase orders. These are the costs and their possible cost drivers. So we have stages in ABC. The first stage is to identify the different activities. Stages in activity-based costing, the first stage is to identify the different activities. The second stage is to identify the possible cost drivers relevant to each activity. The first stage is to identify the different activities, and the second stage is to identify the possible cost drivers relevant to each activity. After identifying the activities, then you identify their possible cost drivers, the cost drivers that are relevant to those activities. The third stage is to collect the costs associated with the cost drivers into cost pool. Those costs associated with the cost drivers, we collect them into cost pools. So that is the third stage. Costs associated with the cost drivers to be collected to cost pool. The fourth stage is to charge cost to the product on the basis of their consumptions of the related activities. Charge cost to the product on the basis of their consumptions. So those are the stages in activity-based costing. So we therefore want to take questions as a work example. The question I'm going to take now will be obtained from ACCA study test by Kaplan, F5, ACCA. Example, Cabal makes and sells 2 products, plus and double plus. The direct cost of productions are $12 for 1 unit of plus and $24 per unit of double plus. Information relating to annual production and sales is as follows. We have annual production and sales, direct labor hours per unit, numbers of orders, numbers of batches, number of setups per batch, special parts per unit. Information relating to annual production and sales is as follows. We have the cost drivers and we have the annual cost. Setup costs. The cost drivers is number of setups. And special parts handling is the number of special parts. Other materials handling, we have the number of batches. Then other overheads is 216,000. Then you have other overheads costs do not have an identifiable cost drivers. And in an ABC system, these overheads will be recovered on a direct labor hour basis. A, calculate the production cost per unit of plus and double plus if the company uses traditional absorption costing and the overheads are recovered on direct labor hour basis. B, calculate the production cost per unit of plus and double plus if the company uses ABC. So, that is for Kaban. Kaban, that is the name of the entity, makes and sells two products. Under the traditional overhead absorption, you are in A, you are to use traditional absorption costing. Traditional absorption costing. I've told you that the traditional absorption costing uses overhead absorption rates in charging overheads to the product or to the cost center. But ABC uses cost drivers. In line with the traditional overhead absorption, we have overhead absorption rate equal to budgeted overheads over budgeted level of activity. Now, the direct labor cost of productions are this. Information, okay? The level of activity will be the direct labor hours, traditional absorption costing, and the overheads are recovered on the direct labor hour basis. So it should be budgeted direct labor hour. That is the overhead absorption rate. The budgeted overheads is 432,000, 432,000. And what is the direct labor hours budgeted for? We are given direct labor hours per unit. Since it is per unit, to compute the total direct labor hour, you will need to multiply the labor hour per unit by the budgeted production. So budgeted direct labor hours now. Budgeted direct labor hours. We have two products. We have for the plus. The hours required to achieve one level of production for plus is 1 hour. And the production is 24,000. You have 1 times 24,000. Because it is written as direct labor hour per unit. That is why we are multiplying that. And that will be 24,000 hours. That is labor hours. For double plus, the number of direct labor hours required to produce 1 unit is 1.5 hours, and the output is 24,000. So you have 1.5 times 24,000. And that will give us 36,000. When you sum it up, you have the budgeted direct labor hours to be 60,000 labor hours. Now, Having computed the budgeted direct labor hours, you can compute the overhead absorption rate. And we say it is budgeted overhead. The budgeted overhead is $432,000. $432,000. You have $432,000 over budgeted direct labor hour as calculated above, which is 60,000 direct labor hours. So 432,000 divided by 60,000, and that will give us $7.2. That is the overhead absorption rate. It is at this rate that the overhead should be charged to the product. Remember, there are two products now. You have to calculate the production cost per unit. You want to calculate the production cost per unit. There are two products. You have double plus. Then we also have plus. As part of the cost, you were told the direct cost of production are $12 for 1 unit of plus and $24 for 1 unit of double plus. So we have direct cost. Direct cost, $12 for plus and $24 for double plus. Then after that now, you now have overheads absorbed. How much will be the overheads that will be charged? The rate at which overheads will be charged to the product is $7.2 per. This is $7.2 per direct labor hours. Per direct labor hour. Now, to produce 1 unit of plus, you will require $1.0 and 1.0 hour. You have 1.0 times 7.2, and that will give us 7.2. For double plus, how many hours will be required for a unit? 1.5 hours. You have 1.5 times the rate, which is 7.2. So 1.5 times 7.2, and that will give us 10.8. When you add it, you have 34.8, and this one will give us 19.2, and that is the production cost per unit if overheads are recovered using the direct labor hour basis for overhead for the traditional absorption costing system. Then B, you are to calculate the production cost per unit of plus and double plus if the company uses ABC. I've told you that for the ABC, activity-based costing, you are going to use the cost drivers. You use the cost drivers, not the overhead absorption rate. We have used not the blanket rate we have used for direct labor hours. Now, we are given the annual production. Okay, if you look at the cost, the first cost is setup cost, and that is $73,200. The possible cost drivers for the setup cost is number of setup. You go back to the number of setup. What do you have there? Number of setup. And the number of setups you are given here is per batch, not just number of setup. It is per batch. Since it is per batch, you will need to multiply by the number of batches. Then you are given the number of batches. If it is number of setup, you will have added it directly and used it. But since it is per batch, then you will need to multiply by the number of batches. Now, setup. So we have for plus and we have for double plus. The number of setup for plus is 1 times 12 batches. 1 times 12, it will be 12 batches. For double plus, you have 3 setup and 240 batches. 3 times 240. 3 times 240, that will give us 720 setup. And the total will be 732 sets up. 732 sets up. Now, the overheads attributable, overheads related to setup is 73,200. Overheads relating to set up is 73,200 divided by 732. 73,200 divided by 732, and that will give us $100 per set up. That is for overheads relating to set up. The second one is those one relating to special parts handling, and that is number of special parts. They didn't say per unit, they didn't say per setup. So you look for number of special parts, number of special parts, special part per. Okay? Now, if you look at where you have the special parts here, it is per unit. It is per unit. So number of special parts now. Number of special parts. Since it is per unit, you have for plus, and then you have for double plus. Since it is per unit, then you will need to weight it as well. Number of special parts, which is special parts per unit, 1 times number of units produced, 24,000. So 1 times 24,000, and that will be 24,000. Then we also have special parts, 4 times 24,000. 4 times 24,000. 4 times 24,000, that will give us 96,000. When you sum it up, then that will be totaled 120,000. Overheads relating to special part now. Special parts handling. Overheads relating to special parts handling. How much is the overheads relating to special parts handling? And that is 60,000. Then you now divide the 60,000 by 120,000. 60,000 divided by the 120,000. And that will give us 0.5 per special parts. Per special parts. 0.5 per special parts. The next one is other materials handling. Other material handlings, and that is number of batches. Other material handling, and that is number of batches. Number of batches, number of batches. Number of batches. Then number of batches, you have 12 and 240. And this is not per unit, not per anything. So you are going to use it directly. You have for plus and double plus. Number of batches for plus is 12, and that of double plus is 240. 12 and 240, that will be total 252. Overheads now, relating to other material handling now. Overheads, relating to other materials handling. And the overheads relating to other material handling is 63,000. You divide that 63,000 by 252, and that will give you 63,000 divided by 252. That will give us $250 per batch. $250 I mean per batch. That is overheads relating to other materials handling. Then we have other overheads. You are not given any possible cost driver for that. But in the note, we were told that other overhead costs do not have an identifiable cost driver. And in an ABC system, these overheads will be recovered on a direct labor hour basis. So under examination condition, even though this clause or this clause is not added, and you have other overheads or general overheads, you use direct labor hour basis for that. So note, we have 4 other overheads. Other overheads, that amounted to 216,000. You are going to use direct labor hour for that. 216,000. Our first working, I've shown the calculation of direct labor hours, where we have direct labor hours per unit. This times this, 24,000, 1.5 times 240,000 times 24,000, and that gives us 36,000 plus 24,000. We got direct labor hours to be 60,000. So if you now have this over 60,000, so 216,000 divided by 60,000, and that will give us $3.6 per direct labor hour. Back to the requirement of the question. You are to calculate the production cost. Calculate the production cost per unit. Production cost per unit of plus and double plus if the company uses ABC. If activity-based costing is used, what will be the overhead per unit? We have computed the rate at which setup costs should be recovered. The rate at which setup costs should be recovered. Okay, overheads relating to setup now. Relating to set up. So, setup, number of setup, and our number of setups per batch. So this one we got 12, and this one times this we got 240 times 3, we got 70 plus 12. So we got 732 then. And when we use 732 to divide 73,200, we got 100. We got 100 then. So it is $100 per setup we got. Now, how many setup now do we have? If it is $100 per setup, $100 per setup. So, if it is $100 per setup, $100 per setup, and the number of setup required for plus number of setup is 1 times 12, which is 12. So, and this one gives us 1,200. For the double plus, we have 100 times the number of setups. Number of setup, 3 times 240, we got 720. If you have 720 times 100, you have 72,000. That is for the overheads relating to setup. If you have 1,200 plus 72,000, it will still give us 73,200. Then we also have 4. The overheads relating to special parts handling. Special parts handling. And the recovery rate we got then is 0.5 per special parts. 0.5 per special parts. And the number of special parts is per unit. We have 24,000, which I've roughed off. 1 times 24,000, which is 24,000. 24,000 times special part, which is 0.5 per special part. 0.5 per special part, and that will give us 12,000. Then this one too. For the second one, number of special parts. Special part, 4 is the special part per unit. 4 times 24,000. 24,000 times 4, and we got 96,000. 96,000 times the rate per unit, which is 0.5 times 0.5, and that gives us 48,000. Then we also have other materials handling, which is number of batches. Other materials handling. Other materials handling, which is number of batches. Number of batches. We got 250 per batch. $250 per batch. So if it is $250 per batch, and the number of batch or batches requires for plus is 12 batch or batches. Other materials handling for plus 12 batches times, and the rate per batch we got 250. So 12 times 250, and that will give us 3,000. The other one, we also have 240 batches. 240 times 250. 250 times 240. That will give us 60,000. Overheads relating to order handling. Overheads relating to order handling is 19,800. And the cost drivers for that is number of orders. And the number of orders we have for plus, number of orders for plus, 10. And for double plus, 140. 10 and 140, total 150. So the recovery rate now relating to order handling and the overheads relating to order handling is 19,800. 19,800 over 150. 19,800 divided by 150, and that will give us $132 per order. So overheads relating to order handling now. And the number of order for plus is 10. 10 times 132, 1320. For double plus, we have 140 times 132. And that will give us 18,480. Then we also have order overheads. Order overheads. And we use the direct labor hours for that. And the recovery rate is 3.6. And the direct labor hours per unit is 1. 1 times 24,000. That will be 24,000 times 3.6. 24,000 times 3.6, and that will give us 86,400. For double plus, 24,000 times 1.5, and that is 36,000. 36,000 times 3.6. And that will give us 129,600. When you sum it up, plus 18,480, plus 60,000, plus 48,000, plus 72,000. And that will give us 328,000. And 80. For plus 1,200 plus 12,000 plus 3,000 plus 1,320 plus 86,400, and that will be total 103,920. The number of units produced. Of units produced. For plus is 24,000 units. Double plus is 24,000. Overhead cost per unit now. Cost per unit. So when you divide, this will be $4.33. Then when you divide this by this, 328,080 divided by 24,000, and that will give us $13.67. $13.67. So now the next thing, you calculate the production cost per unit using ABC system. Production cost per unit. You have for plus and we have double plus. Then at the genesis of the question, you have direct cost. For plus, you have $12. And for double plus, you have $24. Direct cost, 12 and 24. Then overheads now. For plus, 4.33, and for double plus, 13.67. 4.33, 13.67. So when you sum it up, then you have 37.67, and this will be 16.33. That is the production cost per unit.